What's up guys, welcome to Elastic official masterclass recording. This video is phase 1 of sculpting a male bust basic modeling techniques with Kareem. A quick reminder, the moves are the recommended controller of choice for this masterclass.
I'm Kareem, art director of Media Molecule. Today I will be doing a sculpture masterclass. I'll be modeling a male bust and going through basic modeling techniques to block the general form of the sculpture and build up to more detailed techniques and more sculptural philosophies and attitudes to find your own personal style in Dream. And now we begin sculpting our head. The first phase is to block out the general shape of all the head and bust components. Here we go. This is a sculpture pedestal that I've made earlier for the purpose of this tutorial. Also, I've made the space around us and put in it some of my favorite sculptures for inspiration and reference. I've also pre-lit it with nice lights to help us sculpt in a nice atmosphere. Before we start the sculpture, I would like to recap that it's very important to have learned the camera controls. In the Dream tutorials, you will find tutorials just focusing on the camera controls and tells you all about the different nuances of it. The most important one is the grab cam, where pressing your move button on your primary controller will grab the point in space that your imp tip is over. This is the imp tip on top of the imp here. So if I put my imp wherever I want to go, press the move button, pull myself towards that point or push myself away, you see that the camera is moving accordingly. It's very important to have practiced this in order to proceed with the sculpt tutorial. There is also other features in the camera like zooming, which makes you zoom in right close to an area in order to work on very fine detail. I would recommend that you practice using the camera controls now, and when you feel confident in them, click the arrow on the video to go to the next step. The first thing I'm going to do is open my sculpt menu by pressing the T button on my secondary controller. I will pick the modes and choose the sculpt mode. Sculpt mode defaults on shapes. The shape I'm going to start with is the sphere shape. When I start pressing my T button on my primary controller, I can smear my shape continuously like that. This is the tool that sculpt mode defaults in. Instead, I'm going to change to stamp shape tool, which allows me to stamp singular stamps of my chosen shape. This is the tool I'm going to start with in my sculpture. Now I need to stretch my sphere shape. To do that, I'll use form. I tap my two controllers together, which puts me into the form state. Once I'm happy with that, I press the T button on the secondary controller to lock the shape that I've stretched, something like that. Now I need to turn on some guides to help me place my first edits. To do that, I will open my menu again, press the guide menu and select the stay upright guide. Pressing that fixes my shape to upright position only and doesn't go in any other orientation. By pressing the second toggle beside it, it allows it to only rotate by 90 degrees only, like this. The next guide I'd like to enable from the start of my sculpture is the mirror guide. This allows me to work in symmetry, which is very useful for modeling a head. To do that, I will go to the guides, enable it, and this activates the mirror guide, which places a copy of every edit I do. This is very useful in modeling a head. You can see the mirror plane as well is drawn in the center. I will switch that off because I prefer modeling without. Now to place my first stamp, I'd like to get my two mirrored copies exactly aligned on top of one another. To do that, I try to get that center line aligned as much as I can. When I do that, I press the T button on the primary controller to place my edit. For the second edit, for the back of the head, I will turn my shape by 90 degrees and intersect with the front of the head. I would like to also blend that shape onto the first one more softly. To do that, I will activate one of our other features called the soft blend. To soft blend, I press the square button on my secondary controller and twist my hand like that. This allows my shape to blend with the previous shape in a softer way. And when I'm happy with the blend amount, I press the T button on my primary controller to stamp my shape like that. The back of the head is a little bit too long. To modify the shape, I go to my stretch tool, grab the back of the head, and move it inward like that. Now I need to change to subtract to suggest the jaw shape. To do that, I will pick a different shape, the cube, and press this button up here to change to subtract. This allows me to cut out shapes instead of adding them. There is also a shortcut to toggle between adding and subtracting, like that. From now on, I will be using this shortcut. I place my cube at the bottom of the head to cut the jaw shape, and I need to scale this cube up a little bit. To do that, I use the controlled scale, which is pressing the button, the circle button on the secondary controller, and twisting my hand upwards like that makes my shape bigger or smaller. Notice that the guides, the upright guides, are still on, which makes my shapes still upright. I'll do this first cut here for the first shape, and then go on the back of the head to create the back of the jaw shape. Always remember to press the move button and move your camera around to keep examining your edits, that they are what you need them to be, just like I'm doing here. This is roughly what I'm looking for. Then I press the T button. Now the shape of the head is starting to form. When you're happy with your shape, move on to the next step. Now, I would like to exit my sculpture. I'll open my menu again and start a new sculpture. Pick the cylinder shape. You don't have to get the shape or the size of the cylinder right from the start. I'll just stamp it around the right position. I'll pick back my stretch tool to stretch that cylinder into the right size. Stretch it from the top and from the bottom. The next thing I will do is pick another shape, the sphere shape, another time, and stretch it using the form gesture into an ellipse shape, like this. Scale it up, and remember I need to be in the stamp tool, not the smear tool. Now I can soft blend the shape into the cylinder and do another stamp on the side for the shoulders. This is roughly the shape of the upper body and the neck. I will exit the sculpture again, and now I will position and scale the two pieces of my sculpture to get the right proportions. I've switched off my upright guide, and now using the cut tool and turning the upright guide back on to get a clean cut at the bottom for my bust. I got the shape of the top part now and the bottom part of my sculpture. I keep toggling between turning upright off and on for the purposes of the cuts being straight or not. Now I've switched it off. I don't really need it anymore for the work we're doing. I'm now going to scale and move my two pieces around till I just get them relatively a good proportion to each other. I selected the two together by using my X button and selecting the two, and now I can just move them both. To realign any shape, I just select it, and while holding my T button, I press triangle to realign it. So this is a good tip to know. Scoping back into the bottom section again, without the upright guide on anymore, and now I can tilt the neck cylinder a little bit to the front. Exit the sculpture again. This stage is all about trying to get a good relationship between the two pieces so I can start my next stage of sculpture. And now I'd like to re-enter my sculpture and pick the cylinder shape, use it to cut the eye socket using a little bit of soft blend in that cut as well. The eye socket is normally around the center distance of that front egg shape of the head. I'll pick this cylinder again and scale it up to do a cut for the tapering of the side of the head with a little soft blend on it as well. Move on to the next step when you're satisfied. Now to do the basic shapes for the nose, mouth, and chin. For the nose, I'll pick a cube and stretch it again using to this shape. Place it between the two eye grooves that we've done earlier. Use a little bit of soft blend by dialing it up and placing that edit. Again, I can move my edit after the fact using the move tool, just to get it more perfect. That's the basic shape I need for the nose. To do the mouth shape, the mouth or the lips usually sit on top of what we call the mouth barrel, which is a big protruded muscle area around the lips. It usually goes until the middle of the eye socket. I will use a cylinder to do the top part like that and use a little bit of soft blend to blend it with the face. This gives me the first top half of the mouth, and then a smaller cylinder at the bottom to do the bottom section of the mouth. This is sort of a combination of the muscles and lips around this area simplified to the basic form. To do the chin, we'll use the sphere shape and place it at the bottom of the head right there and dial up a little bit of soft blend again to blend it a bit with the head shape. Like that. And now I need to do a little modification to the jaw to make it have the right proportion. So basically, if you imagine a line that comes from the middle of the mouth till the side here, this is where the jaw should end. So all this bit extra at the bottom is a little extra. This is a guide to know the relationship between the mouth and that edge or the corner of the jaw. So we just take a little bit off using a cut from the base of the cylinder with a little bit of soft blend, and it's more convincing or more elegant shape. This is where it should be from these two axes. Now to do a little indentation in the skull, which we always get in the human skull, I will use a sphere and flatten it to do that indentation. I will try to get the flattened sphere as close as possible to the kind of shape I want to scoop out of the head. But rather than doing it in a very sharp cut like that, again, I will turn on a little bit of soft blend to do a softer indentation. I just move my hands in and out till I get the relative position that I want. I notice that my head is starting to take shape now, and the back of the head needs a tiny stretch still to make it slightly smaller. So I get my stretch tool and do that. Now for the ears, I will use the sphere again. Reselecting the shape, by the way, from the menu restores it again to its default uniform shape. I'll stretch my sphere shape to try to get the flat sphere that I want to do the ear. Again, the ear size is roughly from the start of the brow till the bottom of the nose, or the base of the nose. And the positioning of it starts there and ends there. We put it on the side where the jaw finishes, and then I'll get my stretch tool again and give it a little bit more width. Going back to the move tool to keep repositioning it, and I turn a lot the camera around to try to get that positioning as successful as possible. It's very important to look at the ears from the front to see that it's the right angle, and the ears usually protrude out a little bit like that. So much easier to work with just a sphere than a complex ear sculpture. So we try to get the general decisions as correct as possible, will make the specific detail much easier to do. I do another sphere cut to do the general groove of the ear. And it's very important not to get carried away with detail at this point in the sculpture. Just 3 edits to make the ear. One big one, the cut, and a little one there for the little bit at the bottom of the ear. I'll place it down here to get reasonable shape of the ear going. And always examine my sculpture, have a look at it from all directions, and make sure that everything looks reasonably cohesive and consistent. Now to do the eyes, I pick the sphere shape and place the sphere in the middle of the eye groove. The size of the eyeball is about half of that shape, and the distance between the 2 eyeballs is another eyeball. So I'm just trying now to place the first stamp of that eye in a relatively good position. To help me do that, I'm actually going to stamp that first eyeball in the middle, which is the distance between the 2 eyes. I will put it there as a guide for me, and then I will put the eyes in the socket. I'm pushing them back because they're not as front as the one I put as a guide. Now that I've placed them with the distance between them reasonably right, I can delete that using the delete tool, and that helped me just place them relatively well. And I'm still going to move them back and front just by eye to make it convincing. There is a lot of by eye decisions in sculpture that you have to embrace. Now that I've placed the first eyeball, I can do my simple eyelids, or the first structure of eyelids, by using a cylinder and squashing it with the form gesture. And now to do the eyelid, I will stamp 3 cylinders on each side to get the relative shape of the eyelid around the eyeball. Now, because this is all one sculpture, I am not thinking about articulation or any of that. This is one sculpture designed to all work as one piece. If I wanted to articulate the eyelids, we would do them in a different way. So I'm doing 3 stamps for every side of the eyelid. And then moving them with my move tool to get them in better position. And examine and look around at my eye. Usually this is the point where the eyelid is widest. On the top side, it's 1/3 towards the nose, and on the bottom side, it's on the other 1/3 towards the ear. And now we have a basic shape of eyelids around the eye ready. And now we have blocked out the first stage of the head. I think it's a good time to practice this, get your head around it, and when you're ready for the next stage, go to the next
I hope you
step.
found this tutorial recording useful. Click that like button below if you did, and stay tuned to Elastic Right Stick for more Dreams content.